Hi, once again. This is a homily for the 30th Sunday of the year, and essentially, I think everything turns on the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. Now, notice what we're dealing with here are two actual people. They're characters in the parable, obviously, but they're real people in the sense that everybody would have known, okay, I know what a Pharisee is, I know what a tax collector is. And each one of them has come to the temple. So they are aware of a certain minimum of religious observation. But that's where they separate. And what you have on the one side is the Pharisee, who basically is so certain of himself that he knows everything he should be doing, and he has a checklist, and he goes through the checklist, and God is supposed to be happy with that. Now, what this does is it gives him control of the relationship with God. If you go to the tax collector, you will find that he is very humble. He knows he's in the temple, he knows he's talking to God, and he knows that he has screwed up badly. Consequently, he's simply asking for pardon. He's not making any great demonstration about, look at me, how good I am, very much like the characters that we get in the modern Western culture. Basically, look at me, I did this. I should merit, deserve, whatever word you want to use, I should deserve this. He's simply saying, look, I'm sorry, I really botched up my life since I was last here. And this is kind of the closest as we're going to get to confession, chiefly because confession is part of the issue, but mostly it is the issue of how do I relate to God. And tax collector is the one who obviously knows it's personal. Consequently, he can be humble, and with his humility comes the possibility of him reaching God. And for that, we are given the first reading from the book of Sirach, and the prophet says, the Lord hears the cry of the oppressed. So they are crying to God, okay? The Lord is not deaf to the wail of the orphan, so the orphan is crying out to God, nor to the widow when she pours out her complaint. Again, she is actually complaining. She is suffering and complaining. Now, the one who serves God willingly is heard. And here I think is the central characteristic. This person or these people are not listing all the good things that they have done to impress God. Basically, they're saying, look, I rely on you as my personal God, and consequently, I am expecting a return, not a return in gifts or wealth, but an answer from another person. God is being treated as a person here and not somebody to be bought out. Moving then to the psalm, we have very much the same theme as we heard in Sirach. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Another characteristic, let my soul glory in the Lord. Can I enjoy my relationship to God rather than just ticking off all the good things I've done? Can I relish that? And with that comes this complete openness, if you like, this bondedness to God, that I'm depending on God, and consequently, God will reach out to me and reach out in a number of ways. There's a lovely line in one of the prayers in the breviary which said, may everything I do originate from you, be carried out in your grace, and brought to fulfillment by you. There's a recognition of somebody who is totally not only dependent on God, but open to God, and also realizing just who God is. This is not somebody who can be manipulated. This is somebody who is infinitely a personal God and who infinitely loves and cares for us. Uh, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, once more from the psalm, and those who are crushed in spirit he saves. That would tie in very nicely with the tax collector in the gospel reading. Now, Paul writes to Timothy. Timothy, as you know, is one of his bishops, and he's basically saying what he has done, not in a sense of the Pharisee, but rather in a sense, I am being poured out like a libation. That was the, if you like, the ritual way that one poured out oil or other liquid products, wine and so on, as an offering to God, because once you poured it out on the ground, it obviously wasn't consumed by any human beings. Now, he's saying he's being poured out in that way, and consequently, the time of my departure is at hand. But he's been freely allowing God to originate things, situations in his life, and he's cooperated with them and fulfilled them to the best of his ability. I have competed well, I have finished the race, and lastly he says, I have kept the faith. And this keeping is a very active keeping. It's not just that I know that there are three persons in God, that the second person in the Blessed Trinity became man, that he died for us, and so on. Not just knowing those things, but what are the implications then of that glorious event in my life? How do I bring the Paschal mystery to bear? Now, it could be that I simply allow myself to suffer because there is no other way in a situation to respond to it. Other ways I can, if I'm able to, I can let myself contribute to that situation, make it better, make it easier for the people who are there. I can do a lot of sacrificial things, but ultimately I may just be asked to suffer. Going back to Paul's letter to Timothy, the Lord stood by me and gave me strength. Totally personal terminology here. This is a personal God. He's literally as a buddy next to me, helping me do whatever I have to do. And all of this is being done so that the proclamation may be completed, because in fact, this is the purpose for Paul, and really it's the purpose for us. We are meant to be living in this world to complete the proclamation. Now, that may be verbal, but mostly it is behaving morally in situations that can get terribly difficult, to the point where we lose our jobs, to the point where we risk the livelihood of our families, all these kinds of terrible things which happen to people right here in the United States as they try to be faithful Catholics. They might even be arrested, for example. So he has recognized that he has poured out his life. So his goal that he chose was actually a worthy goal, because you don't want to pour out your life for something absolutely trivial. Lastly, then, we come to the gospel, which I've already worked on in some detail. And the Pharisee and the tax collector, as I said, show the two very different approaches. It's not just that one calculates and the other is kind of throwing himself on the mercy of God. It really is different images of God that are tied up here. The Pharisee still has very much the Old Testament idea that I can do X number of sacrifices and therefore win the power of this God to help me. If you come to the tax collector, New Testament idea of God, this God is personal. He's a friend of mine, but not a friendship on which I trade, but a friendship which goes all the way to me recognizing that he's very different from me. Thank you very much.